What is up, everyone? My name is Jack Sapple, back again with another WrestleMania review, and today I am here with a WrestleMania that is very special to me, and very special to me being a wrestling fan in the first place, and that is my review of WrestleMania 18 or X8, because WWE wanted to be edgy. It's the early 2000s and shit, so yeah, the reason why I say this pay-per-view is very special to me, this is the first wrestling show I ever watched. I remember picking up the DVD for this at Video Easy. Yeah, remember Video Easy? And I was like about 5 or 6 at the time, and I remember seeing the WrestleMania X8 DVD on there. And on the front cover, it had The Rock and Hulk Hogan staring each other down, and it reminded me of the SmackDown Shut Your Mouth cover, which is the thing that got me into pro wrestling in the first place. So I looked at that, I'm like, yeah, I'll go check that out. So I hired out the DVD from the store, and it was my first real, like, exposure to wrestling, and it was just crazy to me. It was just all these jacked up guys fighting each other. I thought it was funny that they were wrestling in underwear. I'm like, why are they wrestling in underwear? And even still to this day, it kind of weirded me out. But it's one of those things that you kind of just accept. It's a wrestling thing, so you just go, yeah, whatever. But as a starting point, yeah, I'd say not a bad starting point, man. This show, I thought, was great. It was a great show. So we kicked things off in the Toronto SkyDome in Toronto, Ontario, Canada, with JR and the King on commentary, with a live performance, not for America the Beautiful, but with Saliva performing the song Superstar, which I love that song, by the way. And I thought they did very well. The bass was really loud on this performance. WWE, or WWF as it was called, this was the last pay-per-view WWF was called the WWF before the World Wildlife Fund kind of said, nah, fuck your name, you're now WWE. So, yeah, Saliva performed very well. They played a little WrestleMania X8 hype-up package on the big screens. And right after that, they do the opening promo with all the wrestlers talking about, you know, how important WrestleMania is and all that. It's one of my favorite opening intros to a pay-per-view ever, let alone a WrestleMania. So the first match on the show was for the Intercontinental title. William Regal defending against Rob Van Dam, who had just come over last year as part of the Invasion storyline, and he had become super popular with the fans. I mean, he had a cool, laid-back gimmick, you know, kind of the stoner type guy that would just do all these incredible high-flying moves, you know. It was hard not to like Rob Van Dam, but he ended up winning the Intercontinental Championship in this match by hitting the 5-star frog splash in a good opener. So, yeah, no complaints there. Nice to see the new guy in WWF who had kind of become a mainstay in ECW, but to see him finally get the rub and becoming an Intercontinental Champion. So that was really cool to see. After that was for the European Championship, Diamond Dallas Page, DDP, who defended against Christian in this match. So they were like partners at the time until Christian just turned on him. And I loved the promo Christian cut. He mocked like DDP's smile, and it was fucking hilarious. And says that because he used to throw temper tantrums after his matches if he would lose, and he would just freak out in the middle of the ring, which was just funny. Christian was so good in this time. This was a couple of months after he broke up with Edge's tag team. So, yeah, as for the match itself, it was pretty good as well. DDP won by hitting the Diamond Cutter. And, of course, Christian, throughout the match, was trying to, like, contain himself. He's like, you know what? I don't throw temper tantrums anymore. I'm calmed down. But as soon as, like, the match is over, he's like, you know what? Good. I've calmed down. DDP grabs the mic and says, good job, Christian. You've controlled yourself despite losing in front of 65,000 people. And he's rubbing it in a little bit. And then Christian just flips out. It was fucking great, man. So, Jonathan Coachman, good old Coach, interviews The Rock about his match with Hogan later on tonight, and Rock pretty much says, you know, he wants Hulkamania in all its glory, and he asks Coach if he took his vitamins to say his prayers. I love when The Rock just used to just take the piss out of the coach. Like, if you go on to YouTube and look up any promo with The Rock and Jonathan Coachman, it is gold. And he tells, so Rock asks Coach, yo, did you take your prayers today, Coach? And he says, oh, no, I didn't because I was busy. And you're like, whatever. Get on your knees and pray. You know, say your prayers, brother. And so he goes to do that, and he just says to God, what up, G, while he's praying. And The Rock's like, what in the blue hell are you doing? And just kicks him out and calls him a sick freak, as they used to do at this time. And yeah, it was just a funny promo overall. It's one of those things where people ask me, you know, why do I love The Rock so much? It's when he used to cut promos like this backstage, just how funny and witty he was with his promos. Like, no one can touch The Rock on the microphone. No one. So after that was the Hardcore Championship match. Maven, the young rookie who won Tough Enough, the first ever Tough Enough, defending the title against Goldust. So this was basically your trash wrestling match, as if there were a lot of trash cans thrown in this match, painted gold for some reason. And so after both men smacked themselves in the head with like gold trash can lids, Spike Dudley runs in and pins Maven to win the Hardcore title, because this was the 24/7 rules where the championship can like change hands on a dime, basically. So Crash Holly then runs out along with Goldust and chase after Spike, and this would be a recurring thing that would take place throughout the night, just people pinning each other for the Hardcore title. It was really, really fun. So the band Drowning Pool, who provided the theme song for this pay-per-view, well, one of the two theme songs, performed the song Tearaway. Pretty decent song, I will say, while they show a video package to the build-up of Triple H and Chris Spike, but Al Snow just runs in with a fucking forklift and just like runs into some boxes, so he's not able to pin him on time. So Spike tries to escape, but then the fucking Hurricane swings in on a rope and pins Spike to win the Hardcore title. It was great, man. After that was Kurt Angle versus Kane. This was around the time where the "You Suck" chants were just kicking off for Kurt Angle. And Kurt cuts a promo before the match saying that if he won his gold medal the way Canada's figure skaters won their gold medals, he would have shot himself in the head. So I don't know if that 2002 Olympics in Salt Lake City, I'm not sure. And that he wouldn't have won it without whinging, and how he called himself the Red, White, and Blue Machine, which was I thought was really funny. And the match was very solid, a very solid, good match between the two. I liked how Angle went for the flying clothesline, the same thing that Kane does. And by the way, Kane looked so fucking badass during this time. This is my favorite reincarnation of Kane, by the way. Angle wins the match by reversing a chokeslam into a roll-up using his tights. So at this point, we hadn't really seen Kurt Angle main event a WrestleMania. He had won like world championships during that time period, but never at a WrestleMania. And so is Kane. So Hurricane tries to hide from people coming after his Hardcore title after the match, and accidentally hid in the Godfather's locker room where his hoes were, and they were, you know, just getting changed and all that. And he was, it was behind one of those changing walls, like that's like you can see the shadow type of thing, and it looks, and he's holding a broomstick, and he looks like he's fucking wanking off to the hose. It was stupid, but it was also funny as well. So the Godfather finds him and it's like, oh, get the hell out of my locker room. So yeah, the nice little comic relief segments throughout the show were great. But this no DQ match was no laughing matter. The Undertaker took on Ric Flair, who had just come back after WCW went out of business the night after Survivor Series, and he became the co-owner of the WWF alongside Vince McMahon. And so Flair hit Taker with a lead pipe at No Way Out during his match against The Rock, and because of this, Taker wanted a match against Flair at WrestleMania. And so he went to great lengths to get this match with Ric Flair. He went after Arn Anderson, he went after his son, David, and that just fired up Ric Flair. So he kind of resisted at first, but because he went after some of his friends and family, he's like, no, we're having this match. And because of this, the board of directors decided to give Vince full control of the company after Rick and Undertaker fought in the crowd and Flair accidentally hit one of the fans. And he stated a review would be done after WrestleMania about your position in the company, which would eventually lead to the brand split that would happen a few weeks later between the Raw brand and the SmackDown brand. So the match itself was very brutal. Both men got busted open in this match, but it was also pretty damn good as well. Arn Anderson shows up in this match and hits Taker with a sweet-looking spine buster, but that wasn't enough to put away Undertaker. He locks Anderson in a Dragon Sleeper, only to Flair to break it up with a chair, and Undertaker wins by hitting the tombstone on Ric Flair in a very physical but good match. So yeah, the 10th win, the 10th consecutive win for the Undertaker. So yeah, good stuff overall. After this, we get to Booker T versus Edge. Now, on paper, the match itself doesn't sound too bad, but the build-up for this match was really weird. This whole match was built up over a Japanese shampoo commercial. Yeah, it was around getting a shampoo commercial in Japan. That was the big selling point of this match. Before the match, Michael Cole interviewed Booker T and mentioned how Edge kept mocking Booker and saying that he was dumb and all that. And so Booker says, he aced his SAT and Einstein theories of relatives. Fucking hell, Booker. But the match itself, also, good match. I mean, this was a great show, man. And Edge even attempted to go for his own little spinneroonie, which was kind of funny. And after a series of reversals, Edge hits the execution to get the win. So after that match transpired, the Hurricane continued running backstage, and he met up with Mighty Molly, only for him to get hit with a frying pan by her, and she ends up winning the Hardcore Championship. So after that segment, we had Stone Cold Steve Austin versus Scott Hall with Kevin Nash in his corner. So the NWO were brought in at the No Way Out pay-per-views so Vince McMahon can inject the WWF with a lethal dose of poison because of Ric Flair owning the WWF at the time. So they were brought in and they would go after Austin, but then Austin would fire back against Scott Hall, but Scott would attack Austin with a brick alongside Nash and Hogan. So things got pretty personal between the two. So the match itself, it was alright. I'd probably say it was one of the weaker matches in my opinion, which is such a shame considering, Austin being this major star and Scott Hall being one of the key members of the NWO. You'd expect this match to be a lot better, but I don't know. I wasn't that interested in it. But the best thing about this match, though, was the sell that Scott Hall did for the Stone Cold Stunner. It's one of the best sells of the Stunner I've ever seen because when Austin hits the Stunner, he just goes whoop and flies back. It was great. And Stone Cold wins and celebrates with a little beer bash. So Stone Cold wasn't really in a good position with the company at the time. He had a lot of frustrations building up with the WWF, and eventually around June or July of 2002, he would leave for a little bit, only to come back the following year. So after that was the Four Corners Elimination Match for the WWF Tag Team titles. Billy and Chuck, who were gay but not gay kind of tag team, defending against the Dudley Boyz with Stacy Keibler, who's Stacy Keibler. She looked good. And Saliva even performed Get the Tables during their entrance, which was cool. Also, the A.P.A. and the Hardy Boys were involved in this match as well. So A.P.A. gets eliminated first when Bradshaw gets hit with the 3D. And one point in the match, Stacy tries to distract Jeff by showing off her ass a little bit. And so Jeff just slaps it, kisses her, and then throws her off the apron. So Devon went to jump for the what's up thing, but then gets pushed off the top by Billy and just crashes through a table that was set up on the outside. And so the Hardys capitalize on that and eliminate the Dudleys. But then after Jeff kicks out of a move done by Chuck, Billy hits him with the tag titles while the ref was focused on Chuck for them to retain the titles. So yeah, decent Four Corners elimination match for the tag titles. And yeah, just Billy and Chuck. What a team, man. What a team. So Mighty Molly tries to run away from whatever, but then gets smacked with the top of a door by Christian, and he pins her for the Hardcore titles. So after that segment, we get Man. Hollywood Hulk Hogan versus The Rock. Where do I start with this? So, Hogan mentions how, he's happy to be back in the WWF and how it was home for him. But he mentions how the fans turned on him and how there'll never be a bigger star than Hulk Hogan in the WWF, brother. And so Rock shows up and he's like, Rock and Hogan in the same ring. Who'd ever thought that would ever happen? And so he says, the fans weren't the reason you walked out on the WWF. They loved you. They believed in you. And damn it, The Rock even believed in you. And you talked about headlining WrestleMania after WrestleMania. So how would it feel to headline one more WrestleMania with The Rock? And he says, he accepts the challenge. It'll be a pleasure to kick your ass at WrestleMania. Good luck, because you're going to need it. And just Rock says, not as much as you, brother, and just rock bottoms him in the ring. That's one of my favorite segments ever on Raw. And Hogan responds to that by trying to basically kill The Rock. He would smack him in the back of the head with a hammer, and he would even try to end his career by ramming a truck into an ambulance with The Rock inside. So things got fucking crazy in this feud. But as for the match itself, it's one of those matches where if the crowd was dead silent throughout this match would have been shit. Absolute shite. But the crowd for this match was so energetic and was just reacting to every move they would hit. Just like The Rock would go for like a simple punch and the fans would boo. Hogan would hulk up and the fans would lose their shit. Like, the fans were so invested in this match because you had two of the biggest icons at that time. Hogan finally coming back to the WWF after a 9-year absence, and The Rock, proving himself to be one of the most popular wrestlers of all time at that point. So when the two stared down at each other, it was just an incredible moment. And, according to Hogan, most of the match was changed on the fly due to the fan reception that night. Because going into it, Hollywood was the heel in this feud, and even in this match, while The Rock was the babyface, and the fans just did a complete 180. They cheered for Hogan, whether it be for like nostalgia reasons or anything like that, and they basically booed The Rock. And it was just an incredible, atmosphere that match had. And the match itself was pretty decent as well. After The Rock hit his third rock bottom on Hogan and the People's Elbow, he won the match. And so afterwards, Hogan and The Rock shook hands afterwards and paid respect to each other, which turned Hulk Hogan babyface. So Scott Hall and Kevin Nash come out, and they were like, yo, what's up with you shaking hands with Rock and all that? And they start pushing him, and they beat him up in the corner, and then Rock comes in to make the save. And right afterwards, Hogan basically ditches his Hollywood NWO gimmick and turns back into the real American gimmick. And later on, he'd get rid of the black and white and return to the red and yellow, which would be just an awesome moment, man. So yeah, this match was just an incredible thing to watch. And one of the best moments and matches in WrestleMania history, in my opinion. So after that was the Women's Championship match, Jazz versus Trish Stratus and Lita in triple threat action. Jazz was the champion going into this match. I loved Trish Stratus' outfit with the whole Canadian flag on her ass. It was fucking mint. So before Trish can even get in the ring, Lita and Jazz go after each other. And Trish tried a Stratusfaction, but then gets thrown out of the ring. And afterwards, Lita gets hit with a Fisherman Superplex by Jazz to retain the Women's Championship. Jazz was someone who was brought over during the Invasion angle. I think she was with ECW, and she got brought over to the WWF and did a pretty decent job as for the brief time she was there. So, yeah. Jazz is someone you don't really hear much of when WWE mentions their women's revolution and the pioneers of women. They never really seem to mention Jazz, which is such a shame. But, yeah, decent little triple threat match right there. And then we get to the main event for the Undisputed WWF Championship. Chris Jericho with Stephanie McMahon-Helmsley in his corner. Yeah, you heard that right. Defending against Triple H. So, Triple H tore his quad in a tag match in May in 2001, which sidelined him for the rest of that year. And he made his return on the first Raw of 2002 Madison Square Garden to one of the biggest ovations in the history of wrestling. It's one of my favorite moments ever when he comes out and the fans just lose their shit over him. And he would go on to later win the 2002 Royal Rumble, making his spot in the main event pretty much solidified. As for Chris Jericho, he had turned heel around September and October, and at the Vengeance pay-per-view in 2001, he beat Stone Cold and The Rock in the same night to become the undisputed WWF champion. Something that he still mentions to this very day. He will probably never stop talking about how he beat The Rock and Austin in the same night. But hey, that's not a bad thing to put on your wrestling resume. Let's just say that. So, as for why Stephanie McMahon is teaming with Jericho instead of Triple H in this match, because Triple H returned as a babyface at the time, so Stephanie was still a heel, so Triple H was getting tired of Stephanie's heelish ways, basically, and Steph decided, look, we can renew our wedding vows and all that, and Triple H is like, nah, no, mine. And so she goes on to tell him that, she's pregnant. And at first Triple H believes her, and so they go through with the marriage and all that. So Linda, on the night of the marriage, before Triple H goes out to get married, calls him and says, look, Stephanie's been faking this pregnancy. She's faking it all. And so at the wedding, Triple H is doing the wedding and all that, saying their vows. And I love this moment so much. And he goes, when I look into your eyes, Steph, I see you for what you truly are. A no good lying bitch. Her reaction to that is absolutely priceless. She is just screaming at Triple H. She looks like she's opened up the gates of hell by her reaction, and Triple H basically cuts off their relationship. So after that, Stephanie then decides to become business partners with Chris Jericho, which was so strange because during 2001, Chris Jericho just said some horrible things to Stephanie McMahon, like when he was still babyface. I mean, look up the promos Jericho and Stephanie McMahon had. It is a fucking riot, some of the things he would say. So Drowning Pool would play their version of Triple H's theme song, which was pretty decent, but Motorhead's version will always be the best in my opinion. So Jericho kept aiming for the injured knee of Triple H throughout this match, and Triple H even at one point pedigreed Stephanie McMahon, which got a great reception from the crowd, and he went to pedigree Jericho through the announce table, but he gets back body dropped through another announce table, and so Jericho hits Triple H with a chair behind the ref's back, but he manages to kick out. However, Jericho gets caught flying off the second rope and gets caught into a pedigree for the Gamer to win the WWF Undisputed Championship. And don't get me wrong, I thought the main event was great. It was a great main event, but it was overshadowed, in my opinion, by Hulk Hogan and The Rock, because the crowd was not that fired up in this match as they were with Hogan and Rock, because Hogan and Rock, they did not sit down throughout that match. So I felt like this was bad placement on the card, and even Jericho and Triple H have even said, yeah, we shouldn't have main evented WrestleMania X8, it should have been The Rock and Hogan, because that was the big money match, Hogan and Rock, but management was like, oh, you have to main event, it's for the championship, which is a bullshit excuse now, considering how many non-title main events we've seen after WrestleMania X8. So yeah, that would only be my only downfall for this match. I still really, really like this match. It was still a great match, but to me, it was not as good as Rock and Hogan. So, yeah, that would close the show. The match of the night, Rock and Hogan. No explaining why. How I'm going to rate this show? I'm going to give it an 8 out of 10, because this was my first ever exposure to the world of professional wrestling, I guess you can say. WrestleMania 18 is a very, very important show to me because it was the first pay-per-view I'd ever watched, and it just meant a lot to me. And I know a lot of people don't see it as great as WrestleMania X7 because obviously WrestleMania X7 is probably the best pay-per-view in WrestleMania history. But, yeah, I still really love this show, man. Rock versus Hogan just encapsulates everything I love about pro wrestling. The main event was also damn good, even though I felt like it got overshadowed by Rock and Hogan. And also the undercard as well was pretty damn good. So yeah, great WrestleMania in my opinion overall. And yeah, thank you guys for watching this review. I hope you have enjoyed. If you did, make sure to leave a like, comment down below your thoughts on WrestleMania X8. And if you want to see more from me, hit that subscribe button. You'll be glad you did. Twitter and Instagram is at JackmanLaw31 if you want to check me out there. Thank you so much for watching, and I am out in 3, 2, 1.